morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. Quickly then, my guest this morning, get that out of the way. We have here our friend Majid Jamiu. Mr. Jamiu is Executive Editor, Upshot Media. As always, MJ, it's a delight to have you.
Good morning.
Indeed. And Mr. Lekan Fatodu, publisher at Checkout Magazine, and he's a member of the Babajide Sanwo-Olu Media and Communications Unit. Good morning.
It's a pleasure, sir.
Thank you very much for coming on. And that's because, in particular, you being here, because, yeah, there's a lot going on in the polity. I remember, 2 days ago, Atiku Abubakar, the defeated candidate of the PDP and first run-up, he had this World Press Conference. Yesterday, the chairman of APC likely sort of responded to that press conference with his own. All of those are to one side. Then we're hearing that President Buhari is very likely to imminently dissolve his cabinet. Be that as it is, all of those are connected to what is something of a done deal. We've done with that election. Apart from, as they say, it's not over till it's over. If there are any challenges, all of this will be done. Even heard, interestingly, that what were Atiku Abubakar and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo met with General Abdulsalami Abubakar, all of which is
the advisory team, the prayer team that has been trying to mediate.
That was set up by former head of state
and Martin Bishop Azanku.
Exactly.
To ensure that it's the process of the electoral process
is not disrupted,
disrupted,
and the peace is maintained. So all of that. But moving on to the next stage of the election, because I think that's what next weekend, not tomorrow, of course. Next weekend, we're talking about the governorship and House of Assembly elections. Is it going to be a substantially different? Do you think there will be a substantially different attitude, or can we lean very much on what we perceived in the presidential to occur again, to sort of reoccur in the governorship one? And I'm speaking here about, look, yes, the leading parties are the ruling APC, of course, and PDP. At the last count, it's, how about there were over 20 parties that are interested in occupying Lagos State Government House. Well over 20 parties. I don't know, the figure is somewhere around 24, 25, but well over 20 parties. But I suppose everybody's going to be keeping their eyes on the top two candidates. And you never know who will be a third, because there's Apostle in the presidential, Apostle Felix Nicholas.
From PCP.
There you go, from PCP. I think People's Coalition Party, something like that. And his slogan was, you want free education from secondary right up to university, you know where to vote. Hey!
And he miraculously came third.
There you go. Well, the man is an apostle, so it's interesting when you put the word miraculous.
So the role of miracle was
I've heard all sorts of reasons. So he came third. We don't know. Might there be any dark horse in Lagos? Indeed. Is there any danger that, never mind the dark horse, somebody might actually move towards the finishing line? What do you think, gentlemen? Let me start, because as I introduced Lekan, as member of the Babajide Sanwo-Olu Media and Communications Unit, I almost have a very good idea of what his leaning is going to be. And I will come to you. But Majid, what's going to be substantially different come the governorship election in Lagos State, for example? We go all over the country because there are 821. We've got 36 states. But there are 821 candidates nationwide, in 29 states that will actually be vying. Not all of them.
Of course, there will be a difference in approach, in strategy, and even in terms of the feelers towards what happens on March 9 in the governorship and House of Assembly elections. Number one, egos already deflated, especially coming from the result of the presidential elections. And you don't expect an article now you don't expect anybody to want to approach Atiku for funding for the governorship elections. Yes, I mean, that,
okay.
Even if anybody wants to do that, you'll be hesitant. So Now, funding the remaining elections for the opposition parties is except for states that are lucky to have PDP or any other party in control apart from the ruling APC. That's where a little bit of funding will come from. Like I keep saying, it's a huge amount. You require a huge amount to fund presidential and governorship elections. So for a state like Lagos, for example, you have more than 8,000 polling points on election day. And for those 8,000 polling units or polling points, you require at least two agents on election day. So then, well, just before we came in, we were discussing about how ridiculous the result of the turnout for voters in Lagos was at the presidential elections. I think maximum was 580,000 for the APC, and if you aggregate all the total number of voters that participated in the presidential election in Lagos, it was just about 1.2 million. Given the fact that more than 5 million people actually had their PVCs collected out of the about 6.7 million that registered. So all these factors will come to play. And so also in other states, apart from 7, I think Kogi, Anambra, Ekiti, Osun, Edo, and Ondo states where we have staggered elections. So, but of particular interest will be Kwara, Ogun, Imo, Oyo, Lagos. I mean, those states are states to watch on March 9.
Indeed, and we shall touch on all of those states as we go along the few days we have before the election proper. Yeah. But today, it's like we're starting out in Lagos, which is our base here, even though we go all over the country and indeed outside of it. Lakin, coming to you, this whole almost a paradox of the very poor turnout, going by figures in the presidential election. Is there any reason to expect that the situation will improve? And what do you think was the reason? Because as Majid just cited those figures, you're looking at, of all the people that had PVCs, how come, we're looking at only maybe 10% only or something in that region coming out? And will this hurt the election?
Yeah, it is actually expected that the number is going to increase. Reason being that some of the leaders, powerful leaders across the political parties, have started coming out to stimulate their members on the need to increase their mobilization efforts and on the need to sensitize people on the importance of voting. On our side...
So does that mean then that, contrary to the notion in some quarters that Lagos is an APC state, no shaking, is it you've got to be careful with such a statement that such cliches don't necessarily hold? Is that what you're saying?
It is interesting that, the candidate of the APC is not someone that sits on his laurel. It's a man of great achievements, but even with all the achievements, he's been crisscrossing the states, engaging with critical stakeholders to sell his manifesto and ideas. And he has always been telling people that it is not about the fact that we are the ruling party in the state. It is not about the fact that we have the structure, but we want to convincingly, come out and let people know that we are not kidding. You started by talking about a lot of candidates. Now, it is so glaring to us that many of these candidates are just kidding, literally. And in Lagos State, we can, be magnanimous and narrow the contenders to about 3 people. Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the candidate of the PDP, and the other third guy, that is talking about trying to disrupt the system in some ways. Lagos State.
Wait a minute.
We are talking of
You're talking about Jimmy Agbaje and
Gbadamosi.
Mr. Gbadamosi.
Mr. Gbadamosi. You know, personally, you know, you can see my sentiment. I don't really want to dwell on the rest of the candidates because you know,
still.
He's trying to mention Sanwo-Olu and others.
Exactly. That's basically my point.
But then, as journalists, we must mention Sanwo-Olu,
exactly.
Jimmy Agbaje,
and
And I'm sure when we have Jimmy Agbaje's people in the studio, they're gonna adopt the same strategy.
Because it's so funny.
Their man is the man to beat. You know, that kind
it's
of
so
thing.
funny. Recently, some people were talking about enough is enough in quotes. And
that originated in Kwara.
Exactly, in Kwara. And I did mention to some of my friends.
Enough is enough. There's no English connotation. It is
Otoge. I'm trying to. I'm actually trying to come to something because we have to engage with the reality of our time and what is happening. Ideas have their peculiarities. What obtains in Kwara or in other states does not necessarily mean it's going to happen in Lagos State. And when we talk about these things seriously and frontally, the people can effectively say to many of these candidates, Mr. Agbaje, that is truly Otoge for you. Because if you have been doing something, there is a maxim that what you do, if you do something consistently and you did not change your pattern, you don't expect a different result.
Well, you're talking about the determination of Agbaje to be governor.
No, not determination.
Okay.
It's commitment and seriousness. Determination is different from being committed to it. For instance, in the UK, the reason why they have a shadow government is for you to serve like a monetary spirit to the existing government. So what you do it at every turn of a ruling government, you are actually shadowing it and puncturing and amplifying some of the anomalies.
But Mr.
in many
Agbaje
of
has
the
been
policies.
doing that.
No, sir.
He has been doing that over the time.
Mr. Agbaje has gone on Abanation for so long.
Let me also add, sir, that what you're saying here, President Buhari, as all of us know, it was only on his 4th term that he registered, and you could say the same thing that Mr. President Buhari, Mr. Buhari, as he then was as a contestant, never gave up the dream.
I see the point where you're coming from, but it's going to be there's no correlation between the ambition of Mr. Buhari and Mr. Agbaje.
Okay.
A lot of people,
both of them as candidates.
A lot of people understand the fact that after coming out to contest in 4 years in an election cycle, Mr. Agbaje goes back to whatever he does. Some few months to the election, it comes out. It's a well-articulated plan.
Okay.
Look at Mr. Sanwo-Olu has been tantalizing a lot of Lagosians with his 5 pillars of development, which is codenamed theme. And a lot of people have been analyzing, amplifying, and it's been talking on the need to lead and advocate for issues-based campaign. And that's basically what we are doing. So if any other party is not coming to us on the table of ideas, you're not going to go anywhere.
But MJ, Majid, in case people don't know of your in-house nickname, when you look at it, when Mr. Sanwo-Olu that he talked about at the primary level, look at the votes that sort of assured him the seat, and juxtapose that with the number of people that came out to vote in Lagos. People are wondering, I think was it somewhere in excess of 1 million? Or
about 900,000.
Almost.
970,000.
So
yes.
what's going on? You can't just use immediate pasts to sort of extrapolate how it's likely to be.
Yes, several factors.
Because all those primary votes, you would have thought they would now translate into the public votes in Lagos.
Several factors, and the primary election of any political party, it's not as strict as that of a general election. And for the primary election, a lot of things happen with the INEC register. Now, it's not an excuse, because we have, like I said earlier, we have 6.7 million registered voters in Lagos, out of which we have about 5.4 million with PVCs, which means 5.4 million are actually eligible to vote. Now, on election day, we recorded a mere 18% in Lagos. That's the least all over the country, with Taraba as the highest, with about 58%. So now it calls to question the rationale of Sanwo-Olu winning the party primary with, during a direct primary with 970,000. So even if, are we saying that the party members that voted for Sanwo-Olu, are we saying they don't like Muhammadu Buhari or what? Or don't we have other members of the public who have sympathy for Buhari also voting? So ideally, we should have a minimum of about 1.5 million. Or like in the case of, I still recall when, I think the last election that elected Ambody, I think he got 1.7 million votes, while Buhari in 2015 got 1.5 million votes. So there was an increase of about 200,000 votes. So, but we expect that this Saturday's election,
next Saturday.
Next Saturday, the March 9 governorship election and House of Assembly, because this now, it percolates more into the grassroots, because we'll be having, in Lagos, for example, unlike in some other states where you have just the House of Assembly elections, in Lagos, we are going to have both governorship and House of Assembly. We expect that our youths that are so busy on Twitter and Facebook and social media generally will leave that their polling units on the social media and go to the practical ground, the election grounds, the polling units on the ground to go and exercise their franchise. Because you recall that between the ages of 18 and 35, registered voters in the country is about 35 million, between the ages of 18 and 35, according to INEC data. And now, if you now even see further down, you have the student population that are registered to vote in this country is about 22 million, and out of which about 3 or 4 million are resident in Lagos. So you now wonder if we have, if we expect the youth to take over, and we are not getting involved in the politics. If you see most of the queues on election day, you see more of elderly people that are eager, which means even out of the 580,000 that voted for Buhari in Lagos, you can, well, by the time the demographics are out from INEC, you may find out that about 400,000 of them are adults at the aged. So I think we really need to address this voter apathy from the youth populace.
In your organization, Lekon, you know, the Babajide Sanwo-Olu Media and Communications Unit, no doubt you must have given time, you must have spent time studying this phenomenon. If it is argued without pontificating or stating emphatically that that is the case, that the presidential was a bit remote to some youth, they didn't seem to understand. But at least this one, you drive past Government House every day, you know Government House, it affects you in the state capitals generally. And you have all these youth in Lagos, you have this cosmopolitan youth. And so you might, you know, conjecture that they should want to own this more because they can relate better. Younger people, you know, tends to run for governorships, you know, not, that isn't a rule, but anybody can run. But generally speaking, you see the younger people running for that. There's no way, when you look at the age of the the two main presidential candidates, and you look at the average age of the governors, it's a lot different. This voter apathy, is that one of the things that you see as a danger point? And you said that what you're doing now is going house to house, pressing the flesh, and generally trying to sensitize people. What is it that that Lagos youth are interested in then, if not grabbing hold of their future?
Yeah, there are so many factors that contributed to that low turnout at the last election, and some of those factors he mentioned. Before getting to the youth population, let me talk about some of the things I personally observed during the course of the election. A lot of people, I realized that at the postponement of that election, you know, because the day even before the initial one that was meant to be held, you know, I drove around in the city of Lagos, and around 7 or 6 o'clock, Everywhere was like a ghost town. And this can be blamed on the political leadership or the psychology of, many of the people who are leading us in this country, whose major trade is to stoke fears and tension where there is none. It is not expected that there's going to be any violence or danger, particularly in a city like Lagos. But because of many of these people who love to use social media to promote fears, hate, and tension. And it is also, and moving back to the youth now, I personally am I've started challenging the priorities of our youth, who are so busy tweeting away, Facebooking, and Instagramming. And when it comes to civic responsibility and understanding of civics, you will not find them there. Because at my polling unit, I saw a lot of older people than the younger generation. And when we go back to the drawing board, many of the powerful individuals across the political structures in the state, particularly in APC, it now seems like, if you don't deliver your polling units, if you cannot mobilize, you'll be penalized. And also, we will now increase our knowledge of, civics to many of these people. Can you believe that some people collected the PVCs just because it will be demanded when they are opening bank accounts or when they need to, register their kids in school?
Or as a mere form of identification.
Mere form of identification. Yes. So we need to let them know that this goes beyond that. This determines...
This is the whole matter, the crux of the matter, Majid, I think. What he is saying is indeed, it's a truism. But the youths are also human beings. What is it that is persuading? We spoke about voting apathy. You just said that the motivation, we are guessing, but it's probably a very, very good guess, that people are getting their PVCs not because of this fervor to now use that ability to effect a change. They're just getting it because
as a mere means of identification.
And also, I might need something now, and they say that, where is your PVC? So let me get it because of that. But going behind that, this I might need something. Why is it that they don't understand that, why is it that they don't understand that beyond needing something, you can actually make something. You can make something and reassure yourselves that I can help put a person of my choice in power. And is it because even the governors, even if they are youthful, tend not to look towards the youth once they are in office, and then still, kowtow to the very elders that don't come out, and because they say, okay, with that one, let the youth go. Apart from Baba Kekere, in his own time, you don't have governors, generally speaking, of that. Correct me if I'm wrong. You don't have governors generally anymore that are that senior.
See, now the problem.
In other words, the governors, once they arise in office, are they loyal to the youth that they now expect the youth to be loyal to them?
That's another thing. And now, one expects that the millennial kids who are born in 2000. This is the very first time they would be exercising their franchise, as in those who are born in 2000, in year 2000, they'll be 19 now, or thereabout, 18 or 19, depending on the month. Now, the question is, one would have expected some enthusiasm for them to exercise their franchise. And from the demographics, they are about 10 million. Those who will be exercising their franchise for the very first time. But then you don't see that reflected in the figures. Now, like I said, mere 18% of registered voters actually voted during the presidential elections. But then, like he also said, I think the postponement too could have altered some of the dynamics, because that postponement happened at the wee hours, probably at the morning of February 16. So That's the first the postponement. So a lot of people had already moved, especially in anticipation of. So going back again, because for somebody like me, I'm based in Lagos, but my registration area is in Ekiti. So I was already in Ekiti for February 16. I only got to know at the wee hours. I mean, the news came out around 2:30 or thereabouts. So I was already on ground. Now, it takes a lot of commitment for me to now go back again, because I've got to come back to my duty post, to base. So, and this affected a lot of people. So I want to believe that this 2 weeks break would have, I mean, people have used that to adjust and reprogram themselves. I hope we won't have another postponement, because now if we still have 18% voting in Lagos, then it means there is a serious problem we must address, especially with the youth population and with voter apathy generally.
Going back to that question that Majid also touched on, but the whole matter about how committed have previous, governors been to the very use that they could rightly be depending upon if it were to be that the youth actually know that governments tend to be progressive. I'm talking not just in Lagos, but across the country, because that's where there's a potential power with the youth, and we are saying that voter apathy, might be a factor.
I think one area to look at it is the need for Nigerian youth to clearly define their priorities. Like, for instance, now, out of the, I suppose about 72 candidates, contested for the presidency.
73.
73. Yeah. So out of the 73, just President Buhari and Mr. Atiku Abubakar were could be considered to be in the older generation. So the attention of Nigerian youth was effectively focused on the presidency. And when you come down to Lagos, some of these youth, vibrant youths, and you ask them about the name of the local government chairman, they don't know anything. They don't know what happens within the local community. They don't know the councillor. And there are a lot of people, there's an opportunity to contest for about 40 slots into the Lagos State House of Assembly. And look around, you will not see many of these active youth.
So the political education is very, very low.
It's very, very low.
You know what, I've got to go on a break, and we'll be right back, and we'll open the phones, of course, and include your calls. Stay with us, please. Okay, welcome back. Looking towards the House of Assembly and governorship election. Both of them equally important. We need a governor. You also, we have seen how the House of Assembly can play a pivotal role. So both of them are just about as important. You can't have one without the other. All this whole checks and balances thing. But we're complaining here. I think the complaining is, the right word. We're complaining that the apathy, seeming apathy out there, might just do us in again, going by what happened with the presidential election. But we were in the middle of explaining, Lekon had given us some idea, some notion as to how that was being addressed. And I think it was you that ended up by saying that if the pattern, the presidential voting pattern repeats itself, then we do have a problem, But, one was...
Well, I think the unemployment rates amongst our youth populace is also a critical factor here. Despite the fact that we have some social intervention programs from the federal government and some states, like the N-Power, the market money, trader money, all those stuffs, especially the N-Power is targeted as employing about 2 million youths. But from the figures from the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board now, about 1.8 million will be sitting for JAMB, which means about between 1.5 and 1.8 million graduates are churned out from the universities every year. But then how many of them are gainfully employed after graduation? So You see these figures rising. So we have a distraught youth population that feels they have nothing to gain in this government. So why
bother might be
why
their,
bother? Yeah,
their notion, their
that
mistaken
is it.
notion.
So-
Okay, yesterday, well, I'm happy to announce that, the Airtel line, unlike yesterday when Nifemi was, sitting in this chair, he had a problem with the phones. The whole program had a problem because people were just being told that the number doesn't exist or whatever. But we're happy to say that Reverend Dominic has got through. Good morning, Reverend Dominic.
Good morning, Yori. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good morning, Moji.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, the young man there.
Good morning.
Lekan Fatodu.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, Dominic.
I wish you can give me about 60 seconds to make my point.
Go right ahead, please.
Okay. Let me tell you what happened on Saturday about this register we're talking about. I voted last week Saturday because of Reverend Dominic. My name was not on the hard paper of the register. But the card reader read my name, read my picture, read my backstory. But my name was not on paper. So people were saying, how could Reverend Dominic could not vote? I know 5 adults that the same thing happened. They had their PVC, that their name was not on paper. So that disfranchised many before me. Number 2, Yuri, we don't interrogate this register very well. I had the increase and input in this register. Nobody talk about the death rate. People die every day. And nobody, the register did not tell us, this is the death rate, this is new input. We keep talking about new input and new output. No register standard way anywhere in the world. Number 3, the law is either rigid or not rigid. The INEC adult staff do not know the law to follow. Are we going to read your card and you are correct and allow you to vote, or that it is correct in the card reader, but it's not on the hard paper? So for them, it's neither here nor there. We must strengthen this thing if we want good, but a good register. Number 4, how all of us there and media, how excited are we in Nigeria? If you ask me, no good Nigerian is excited about the level of things. So that affects our young ones who do not even know whether this government has anything for them or not. My daughter fight all to Chanel to vote this time. She couldn't get her PVC. My wife registered near her office in Ikeja to transfer it to the Alimoshoya where I live was impossible. There's a lot to talk about this register and the effort you're talking about. I pray your review. Some of you in the media should do what I call investigative journalism. Why do we have this apathy? 72 million people, 29 million people voted. It's quite abhorrent. We must look at it. Are we going, moving forward or backwards?
Thank
so
you.
For the last one,
Okay.
please, we must tell our brothers APC in Lagos to make peace with non-indigenous. There's no way we can have good elections where somebody who has lived in Lagos for 30 years, my children do not speak Igbo. I don't know why you can't allow them to do things well or vote in Lagos peacefully. Please, so we can have the transition. And congratulations, Buhari, I have to practice. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dominic. Appreciate your call. Yeah, he makes the point about INEC. Would you like to talk about that first? I'm sure Majid will also join in.
Yeah.
Does INEC need to do anything differently because INEC seeks to be, getting better with each one?
They actually need to do a lot of things because the reports from the foreign and local observers also alluded to what Reverend Dominic said. Like it was in the past, we still have the problem of logistics, late arrival, lack of understanding of the process, lack of capacity, if you like, on the side of the ad hoc, members. Like, for instance, when I got to my polling unit, I saw my name, my face, my name on the board, amongst other people. When I was about to vote, the young lady there was saying to me that, oh, Mr. Fatodu, there's something wrong. I don't think you can vote now and all that. I said, what else do I need to let you know that I'm a registered voter? Yeah. And I've been voting in that polling unit since, when you can imagine. So all of those things put some people don't have that patience to go through many of those things, that you experience at polling unit. And I believe that we should have gone past, some of these shortcomings. And I think it is important for INEC to address many of these issues.
Indeed.
They are really, really embarrassing.
Okay, before I come to you, Majid, let me bring in Ibrahim in Zaria. Good morning, Ibrahim.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for calling in.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone in the studio.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. I just want to clarify something from the last caller.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Just like he said, maybe INEC might have their own shortcomings, but there is one important thing you have to know. I think the problem comes from the ad hoc staff that the INEC recruits. Maybe they are not well trained, or what, I don't know precisely, but like what he said, when somebody could not locate his name in the register, there is something you can do about it. There is what is called the tender bylaw given by INEC. The lead is supposed to be issued with tender bylaws so that vote is for somebody who could not locate his own name on the register. Secondly, let me call on all Nigerians. Let's try to be one. Let's not divide people because of sentiment. Let's encourage this government so that they could do something positive for Nigerians. Please and please. There is nothing like sectionalism here, but let's put our heads together and be one. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim, for calling in. So, Majid, on the question of INEC, getting better and better, learning from what problems have occurred here and circumventing those problems going on, you have any ideas about?
Yes, I had a similar experience. I was a media. I was accredited as a media personnel on poll day, and I had to intervene in several polling units where, like Dominic said, you find your name on the register, or your name will not be on the register, vice versa. But then the card reader will read your card and accredit you, but then the ad hoc staff will not allow you to vote. They will tell you your name is not on the register. And at a point I asked, which one is more important? The card reader reading the PVC and saying, ticking OK, because the card reader will read and tick OK, which means it's successful. This person can proceed to vote. So I said, so she told me, the ad hoc staff told me, yes, there's nowhere she will tick on this. I said, then make a mental note, because the card reader will take, normally it collates the number of voters that are accredited. So you should be able to take note. I think INEC needs to do a little more training for their ad hoc staff. Although they have some people they call SPOs, special superior presiding officer or whatever, that moves on. They have about one or two in each ward that supervises the other poll clerks on election day. But I think this is not sufficient enough, because in my town, for example, we have 21 polling units, and they spread almost about 2 kilometers. So for one SPO to be moving up and down, checking these kind of things, and a lot of people get impatient. So
Indeed.
that could lead to some
slow down things a bit,
slow
so
down
these
things
rough edges
on election
really
day.
have to be
sorted out. Yes.
sorted out. Chukwuemeka calling in from Lagos. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Yori.
Thank you very much for calling in.
And good morning to our panelists in the studio.
Good morning.
Well, I want to quickly make my own contribution as regards to the governorship and House of Assembly election coming up next week, Saturday. Well, what I want to say is it will be a different ball game, in the sense that if you look at what happened last week, Saturday, it was a keenly contested election, in which, if you look at Lagos is a mixed breed, where you have both the Yorubas, Igbos, and Hausa, and you can see the way the vote goes. But when it comes to Lagos, the party on ground have really shown that yes, they can deliver good governance to the people of Lagos. So I don't see any contest at all. And if you look at the candidates of other political parties, they only come once in every 4 years when elections are coming up. After the elections, you won't hear them again. So what I want to say is that It's a win-win road for Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and kudos to him, and congrats to our president-elect. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. At least we want us to arrive at the station first before joining the train. But no doubt the other political, contestants will also be seeing it from their point of view as well. But there's plenty in what he says.
Of course,
there's that big difference. And also, people, common sense is supposed to be allowed to prevail. He mentioned Lagos being a mini Nigeria.
Absolutely.
I know Lekon will be very excited.
I'm particularly excited with that comment, and I thank you, Chukwuemeka. I'm more excited because this is coming from his name, a non-Yoruba individual. And he has spoken...
That is what...
Exactly.
He might also be a Lagosian.
A Lagosian. And he has spoken glowingly about the structure of APC in Lagos State, about the person of Mr. Sanwo-Olu, as an excellent administrator.
Good, yeah.
And, I have always been saying something that Mr. Sanwo-Olu is that kind of brand that excites, marketers and PR experts, because you don't need so much to do in terms of overhauling. He came prepared, so it makes the job easy. So many of the ideas that we have been sharing to all Lagosians, they are proven and tested, and they are believable. So, we are also...
Let it be said, there is no Lagos State governorship candidate that has not fitted into what you are just
that is what I'm saying.
Now.
Yeah,
There's none.
That is why I started.
Never mind.
Absolutely.
That it possibly could scatter
from the time,
but it starts out with everybody being exactly what you've just said.
That is basically what I'm saying. The trajectory has been very fantastic.
Okay.
And that is the reason why we have to keep this team and maintain the momentum. And we will not allow anybody to create unnecessary tension when there is none in a state like Lagos. This is a state where you have, highest number of inter-tribal marriages and relationships, and we have a lot of people trading. We will go to Mile 2 or Mile 12. We will go to Alaba, interact with people across ethnic groups. So we will not, Ladipo market. So we will not listen to anybody whose political tone is tilting towards creating division when there is none. Mr. Sanwo-Olu has always been saying that I am going to run an inclusive government, and my government is going to be for all Lagosians, regardless of your tribe and tongues.
Pastor Chris, good morning. Thank you for holding on.
Good morning. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for calling in. Go ahead, please.
Based on what happened on last Saturday election, I make my contribution very fast. I want to congratulate Mr. President because he's president for all. But my point is that the problem that happened in Lagos last Saturday, if you look at it, you see that every person in Lagos has the right to choose his candidate. Everyone has the right to vote for PDP or APC,
or any other party.
Party dominance in Lagos. But that was denied to so many people. Is that what is going to repeat also on Saturday? There must be caution to the APC leaders in Lagos State. There must be freedom to choose who will govern you. There must be freedom to choose who will be your president. Most of the people we are threatened, we are beaten up. Those places where ballot boxes were being thrown away, investigation on grounds said that we are the people that were compelled to vote for APC, or they face their life in danger in Lagos State. This is not democracy.
All right, then. Thank you very much for calling in, Pastor Chris.
No, these are claims that could not be substantiated.
He said investigations ongoing. So, naturally, the matter, it will be investigated. But as you said, these are yet to be, fully substantiated, right?
Yes, and you see, Lagos is such a lovely place to be. I've been around for quite some time, for at least for about 30 years now. I've been living in Lagos, and I have a lot of my friends as Igbo or Hausa, and you see that the kind of mix, the kind of blend we have. I have an editor whose wife is fully Igbo. He is also Igbo. Is a level 10 or 12 officer now at the Lagos State Civil Service. Lagos is such an accommodating society, and we have so
that point,
we have-
I don't know why
and people
it
are
is missed
people are
sometimes.
people are thriving. Go to from Papa Ajao straight on to Festac and so many and along Badagry. You will see Igbo names on the streets. The streets are named after Igbo indigenes. So.
Yeah.
But in other parts of the country, that cannot happen. It shows Lagos is such an accommodating society. So I don't think we should allow elections or party affiliation to distort this blend that we have. Just like he said, Lagos is such a homogeneous cultural society that the kind of fracas that happened in at Okota was quite unfortunate. I expect that won't happen on March 9. But then I think we should continue. I think my advocacy is for us to continue to live as brothers and as the kind of friendship and aura that brings us together when Nigeria scores a goal during a football match is what we should take
to the political field.
To the political field as we move on on March 9.
Okay, indeed. Sam Amashia's program comes up tomorrow, Saturday on TVC. But in the meantime, he's going to call in. Good morning, Sam.
Hello,
Hello.
this is Sam Omashe.
Yeah, I just said so. I said your program is tomorrow, but you're giving us a preview perhaps this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to intervene on the issue of the distinction
Sure.
between the presidential and the state elections. And I wanted to clarify and say that the reasons there are differences in those elections is that one is a national one, the other one is local. And local elections tend to drum up different kinds of sentiments than the national election. So elections in places like Lagos, Akwa Ibom, Sokoto, Ogun, Imo are going to be peculiar. And it's not what you really see in the central one that actually happens in the local. Like in Lagos, where about 900,000 people voted in the primaries, you could also extrapolate from that the people were not really interested in the national one, and they were not even mobilized sufficiently national one because their focus is actually Lagos. So you are going to see the same kind of sentiment in Sokoto, where the election was closer in Sokoto State in 2019 than it was in 2015, 15, where Wari had a kind of landslide. And the factor there is the local governor, the governor there, Tambuwa, who has mobilized the states to kind of narrow the gap. So we're going to find peculiar tensions in the state, like in Plateau, for instance, where even though Buhari lost in the general election, the polls, the gap was narrower, and so certain other sentiments are going to work where APC want to contend for the governorship. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. That was Sam Amashia, editorial board chair of the Nation newspaper. Thank you for calling in. Indeed, it's a point that, in case it needs reminding, the factors are different for this local election. The focus is different. The sentiments will be different. But we were bemoaning the fact that the level of political savvy, political education, political knowledge, take a handful of youths anywhere, ask them for local government chair people, you're not going to get very, very good results. So one wonders if that might affect anything and whether there's enough time to do anything about it now. Maybe going forward into, maybe there might be a medium-term, if not long-term, medium-term plan to get youths involved, but you see, it's not going to be by word of mouth. It's going to be more by action. And the youth seeing that it is in their better interest, and they are motivated to want to be active players. Onome, good morning, all the way in Delta.
Hello?
Onome in Delta, good morning.
Good morning.
Please go ahead with your comment. We lost Onome. Do you want to comment on the point that Simon Mashe made?
I think it is also important to emphasize the fact that the parties, they need to find a way of creating a platform or a channel where they will continue to educate their members on the importance of voting. It is not just by voting during the primary. It is not just by voting to select somebody that will represent the ward or the local community, but the kind of engagement that would have broad impacts on governance, on the way of life, and such that people will realize that when you exercise this franchise, you can have this confidence, this fulfillment in your mind that you have done this for the sake of your future, for the prosperity of your business, and for the safety and security of the space that you live in. So the benefits of voting need to be aggressively amplified at this moment.
I'm guessing that once the youths understand that it is in their best interest to vote, which perhaps is not the case right now.
Exactly.
These people don't mess around when it comes to getting what they think is important to them.
Exactly.
Whether it is PVC, whether it is some ACCA form, whatever. But let me quickly, let me not lose out. I have someone from Tokwemo. Yakub! Good morning, Yakub.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, and good morning to the two wise men in the studio. Because of time,
very
hello,
quickly.
Are you hearing me?
Yes. Go ahead. 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. You see, this coming election, March 9, is going to be quite different from the one that we already had. You see, a lot of factors is happening in presidential election that time will not permit me to be enumerating. When we are talking about religious aspect of it is there. But quickly, this coming election, is going to be a very wide margin. Why am I saying that? Let me give you a typical example. In my locality here in Dokwemu, there's some certain street that you will never thought that it will be tied. Today, if you go to those streets, it's a tied road. You cannot imagine Chukwemeka or Chinedu that is staying in that very particular street today that will vote for another party because he believes this structure that is in ground.
We've completely run out of time, Yakub. I appreciate you. We've completely run out of time. But thank you very much. And I think we extrapolate your thoughts. Thank you very much for contributing. And also, gentlemen, we've completely run out of time. But I wanted to thank you for your perspectives. Lekan Fatodu, a publisher, Checkout Magazine, member of the Babajide Sanwo-Olu Media and Communications Unit. And MJ, we call him that locally, Majid Jamil, Executive Editor of Short Reports.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that's our program. Please join us on Monday for a fresh edition. The whole thing now is looking towards the next set of elections, which is the Governorship and House of Assembly elections. Have a great weekend. I'm Yori Folani. Bye-bye for now.